Hello, everyone. You are listening to the C Squared podcast with Corey and Curtis. Today, we have a super awesome guest, Mr. Barley, Senior A&R from Nuclear Blast. We are super happy to have him here. He's going to be shedding some knowledge bombs for y'all. So tune in, listen up, and take notes because this will be a pretty valuable podcast this time around. But before we get going, I do just want to say thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, no problem at all. It's really cool to be invited. And yeah, I've been listening to kind of various episodes of the podcast, over the last kind of 12 months while I've been sat indoors doing nothing. So it's really cool to connect with you guys.
Cool.
Oh, awesome.
So the very first question we got for you is, can you give me a little bit of a nutshell version of your history in the industry, just like the nutshell version?
Oh, yeah, nutshell. It's a pretty big nut. But yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'll be as quick as I can. So essentially I started my own record label probably around 2005. The record label is called Basic Records, and signed a few bands around that time. That company kind of developed into a publishing company and also a PR company. The PR company was called Hold Tight. And yeah, we kind of developed things from there. I went on to then be asked to join the board of directors at the Association of Independent Music, or AIM for short. And from there, I was then I met a couple of really interesting people there. One of the guys from Believe, who invited me to come and join Believe's team, and that was in 2017. I joined Believe's team to run TuneCore. So I was the head of TuneCore UK from the beginning of 2018 onwards, which coincided with the fact that Believe was also in the process of acquiring Nuclear Blast at that time. And that was something that was very, very interesting to me. Something I was kind of involved with in early conversations to see how that was being head up. And I transitioned from head of TuneCore UK into senior A&R at Nuclear Blast just over a year ago. So it was summer 2020.
Nice. Very cool.
Nice. And do you want to just kind of cover in a little bit more detail the types of roles that you've had at each of those places and like the kind of areas that your areas of expertise? There we go.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my first and foremost passion of an area of expertise is A&R. That's certainly what I've focused the large part of my career on. Is really just kind of A&R and being entrepreneurial within music. And I think really just the last kind of 15, 20 years has been just working with bands at every level, and that's taking bands from very kind of small early stages, kind of unknown stuff, to doing first records and first albums with those bands, to then helping them develop in their careers. And some of the bands and artists that I've been working with maybe for 10, 15 years or more. And I think that whether it was through the work I did at Hold Tight, or the work I did at Basic Records, or the work I did at TuneCore, or the work I do now at Nuclear Blast, it's all it's really kind of starts and finishes with with the artists, with the bands, and really about kind of taking them from where they are, whether that's point A, point B, point C, right the way through, but making sure that that we're kind of adding value and helping those bands to grow. And I think that's the fundamental thing that I certainly kind of set out to do in my day-to-day work is enhancing where a band is at right now, and working with that band to develop and grow their audience, and to create the best possible music they can create.
So I have a follow-up for that, which is basically, so how do you kind of determine who those bands are that you're going to be taking from that point to the next point?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think every A&R will answer this differently. For me, quite often, especially in the work that I've done with my own label, there had to be a kind of like a a personal connection. I had to really kind of feel what that band was doing, and you know, understand who they are as creatives and who they are as artists, and what art they want to put into the world, and how they want to, you know, how they want it, how they want that to be managed. And so that kind of plays a big part. And I think, you know, it still does play a part in my day-to-day role here with Nuclear Blast now. But ultimately, you know, it's no secret that, you know, I joined Nuclear Blast full time, you know, a year ago. And of course, Nuclear Blast comes with, you know, with its own legacy, and, you know, with its own, you know, roster of bands. And of course, some of those bands, you know, I didn't have the, you know, the good fortune of signing. You know, that was done in previous years. So, you know, I've inherited a few bands to work with, but where possible, you know, that can be one area in which I like to try and, you know, pick something up that already exists, and enhance it and make it better. But I think that for me, it's just really about kind of connecting with a specific artist that I feel has something to say. There are a lot of bands out there, but honestly, there are a lot of bands out there who don't really have anything to say, don't really have anything to contribute. And I try where possible to steer away from that sort of stuff. And you know, I think it's for me, it's much more interesting to take one or two, you know, fully creative and unique things, and really kind of try to drive that forward, because those are the things that I think we'll see the, you know, the biggest change in our scene. They're the things that, you know, people will kind of look up to. You know, in the early days for me, it was a UK band called Enter Shikari, who were kind of combining electronics and you know, heavy guitars and hardcore. And that at that time, you know, this is kind of 2005, that wasn't really being done. Then, you know, kind of fast forward a few years later, you know, I picked up Sleep Token and developed that band from, you know, from the ground up. And, you know, was a kind of ultimately released the first, you know, EPs that, you know, commercial EPs that the band put out. But, you know, these are kind of, I guess, a couple of examples where, you know, it's something really unique. It's something really interesting. It's something that, you know, that there aren't 10 other bands that are all kind of doing the same thing or sound exactly the same. So, you know, those things are the things for me that get me super excited, and you know, remind me why I love music and love this art form so much, and want to work in it day in, day out.
Nice.
And so just to back up just a tiny little bit, because there's a lot of kind of misconception or even mystery around what an A&R actually does. Do you want to break that down a little bit for those out there who may not fully understand what the position entails?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd love to. And you're right. You know, part of the reason why I love having this opportunity is to kind of demystify some of that stuff. And you know, I think that it has this kind of reputation of being, you know, the dark arts of the music industry, and you know, I don't think that's the case at all. And you know, I'm here to try to you know, unwrap some of that stuff for sure. But yeah, you know, it's multifunctional. A&R is multifunctional, but really you just need to look at what, you know, the A and the R stand for, and really understand, you know, quite how that works. You know, you're looking at the artist and their repertoire and everything that entails. And really, it's the, you know, if you are lucky enough to be, you know, working with a company the size of the, you know, the Nuclear Blast is, you know, the A&R's responsibility is not only just to be out there, you know, scouting and finding a band. You know, honestly, scouting and finding a band is the tip of the iceberg as far as I'm concerned. You know, some people say, you know, that they work in A&R, and really what they mean is that you know, they find cool bands and have an opinion on it. I think that's valuable, and I think, you know, it's work that needs to be done. But in terms of kind of real A&Ring, you know, you're working far beyond that. And as I say, if you're working in a company the size of Nuclear Blast, really it's the A&R's job to bring that artist or bring that band into the company and run it through the company. Be responsible for making sure that the communication about who this artist is, you know, you're running it through marketing, through product, you know, through the press team and promotion team. You're making sure that everybody in the company, or the key stakeholders in the company, fully understand who this band is, what the artistic vision is, what the goals and objectives are for this band moving forward, and actually, you know, why we should give a shit about this band. You know, that is a kind of fundamental thing for, you know, for an A&R to make sure that they're doing, you know, within the company. But you know, I want to kind of, the other thing I want to demystify is the fact that it's like the most fun part of the music industry, because, you know, sure, there's some really fun parts about it. I'm not gonna deny that, but you know, half of my time is spent buried in spreadsheets, and it's putting budgets together. It's doing a whole ton of research on, you know, a band, maybe a band's past, you know, sales, what their audience looks like, doing some deep dives on their analytics, doing some deep dives on, you know, international record sales, taking that and then actually putting a deal together. And the thing is that, you know, the deal isn't just the, you know, isn't the contract. The contract kind of comes after you've actually put the budget together, to understand what's worked, you know, taking all of that data, taking all of that research and analysis, and then using it to inform how you're putting a deal together for a band, so that you can make a projection on how that band is going to do and how that band is going to sell. And then from that, you can then use that information to start putting your deal together and actually liaising with, you know, with the lawyers and with the, you know, and the rest of the legal team to actually put this thing together. And I think that, you know, that's a big part of being an A&R in, you know, in today's industry, and it is probably the part that doesn't ever get spoken about. So I'm here to tell you that A&R can be boring as well as fun. So yeah, I just want to make sure that, you know, people understand that. Yeah.
So I have a quick follow-up just on that then. So when you're looking for a band, like you're doing the scouting type thing, obviously you want the music to be good and it's got to be something that you're into. But how, like, what do you actually look for then, like in terms of quality? Like what are you looking for, like as an A&R, I guess is what I'm trying to say, in terms of music, not in terms of sales or anything like that, but just musically.
Yeah, and again, this is where it's all in, you know, the eye of the beholder. And, you know, I try to be as objective about some of this stuff as I possibly can. But inevitably, you know, look, music is art, and art is subjective. And, you know, what you think is great, you know, I might think isn't so great, and vice versa. So, you know, that, like, I think I would just kind of refer to what I said before. I think, you know, first and foremost, you know, regardless of where things are at, for a band, I just want to be working with true artists. I just want to be working with bands who aren't just in a band because it's a cool thing to do. You know, I don't really want to be working with bands that are just, you know, kind of picking this up as, you know, as a weekend thing, is because you know, they enjoy playing guitar. I think honestly, I take my hat off to anybody that wants to put themselves out there and be in a band and go play shows and whatever. If you're just out there and you're having fun, more power to you. And yeah, you know, I think you should absolutely do these things for fun. But equally, I try to align myself with artists and with bands who just have this innate urge to create. You know, this is the thing. Like they couldn't possibly be doing anything else other than producing music, you know, writing lyrics, you know, creating songs, creating pieces of art for other people to enjoy, or not even just for other people to enjoy, but other people might enjoy it as a byproduct. But first and foremost, it's their calling. They have to do this. They have to get this music out of their, you know, themselves. And where possible, I try to align myself with people like that. And that's probably one of the key things that I'm looking for. Of course, I'm looking for, you know, for talent. And of course, I'm looking for, you know, you need to be able to play guitar proficiently. You need to be able to play the drums proficiently. You know, all of that kind of stuff goes without saying. But, you know, again, just because you're like the world's fastest guitar player, or, you know, you're an insane shredder, to me, like, I'm like, that's cool, but it doesn't mean you can write a great song. It doesn't mean to say that you can write a piece of music that somebody else is going to connect with on an emotional level. And I think that that's something that gets really quite overlooked sometimes. It's like, yeah, you know, these guys are incredible musicians. Yeah, that's great. But for me, that's like, we shouldn't even need to talk about that part. That part should be done. You know, we should be talking about, okay, what are you creating that's moving people? You know, that's art. And that's ultimately what I look for.
Cool.
On the business side of things, so that kind of covers the artistic side of things that you're looking for. Obviously, you're ultimately looking for passion. But on the business side of things, what else are you looking at when you're looking at a new band? Are you looking at their social media, their Spotify? Like, what are all of the areas that people should really be building before they try to reach an A&R?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is, you know, this is the trick, isn't it? This is the trick, to combine everything I just said with, you know, the actual real world black and white stats, you know. And the thing that usually that can, you know, justify or you know, kind of quantify that for me is actually if that band is already making a connection with people. You know, if they've only been a band for, you know, a year or two, or, you know, a very short time, what work have they been doing themselves to really kind of move the needle? And usually what I find is that those artists, those bands that are really kind of genuine, really passionate, really and are creating something that people really want to connect with, I'm usually finding that they're picking up an audience automatically. You know, they're being recommended by local friends or local groups or a local promoter or, you know, whatever. And I think that that's, again, is kind of one of those key things. But in terms of what I'm looking for on the business side, yeah, of course, you know, if I bring a band into a label like Nuclear Blast, it probably needs to be at a certain level for the most part. You know, for us to understand that there's an audience there, and that we need, you know, we have an audience to build from. You know, some of that can be important, but it's not always the case. You know, of course, you know, for every huge band that we work with, and for every big signing that we make, you know, I just on personal experience, you know, I signed a band about a month ago, and we haven't announced them yet. They're from the UK though. But you know, they have very little in terms of Spotify listeners or, you know, social media numbers to speak of. But that's because, you know, they're a super young and new band. But for me, I just instantly connected with what they're doing, you know, musically, aesthetically, you know, everything, their whole mission about, you know, who they are as artists and what they want to, you know, bring into this world. You know, I had to be a part of it. And so there is as a real example of, you know, that kind of, you know, usually you do need these numbers, and usually you do need an audience for it to make sense, but there are rare occasions where you don't. And that's one of them. So I guess I wanted to kind of at least mention that, to give some hope, I guess, to some of the bands out there that maybe, you know, kind of aren't quite there yet, you know, that they maybe don't have the numbers, but maybe they are doing something genuinely interesting that the world needs to hear. So I want to definitely give some hope to some people that still does happen, for sure. But in the main, yeah, you know, you need to do your work, you need to network. You know, I think yeah, I listened to a couple of other podcasts that you guys have done, and you've had some really great guests on, and you know, time and time again, this thing about networking or network comes up, and I think it's massively important. You know, you as a band, you need to be out there, whether you need to be, you know, networking online, or, you know, certainly networking in your local area, playing, you know, local shows, making sure you're networking with other bands in your, you know, in your genre, networking with local venues, local promoters, and then hopefully building up that local level to take it national, and then international. You know, that's kind of the, you know, it's a bit of a kind of an old school way of doing things, but it definitely still holds some value, you know, in this day and age as well. So I think, yeah, just working hard, you know, like it can be tough. You know, you're creating music and you're creating this art, and it's taking a lot of your time and energy and passion, but you know, you need to also put the effort into helping that art reach its audience, and that's where all of the hard work with networking comes in.
I want to just ask you a question about networking. So, I mean, obviously you don't want bands spamming you and, DMing you all the time with their links and shit. So what would be a positive way for someone to network with an industry professional versus just sliding into their DMs and spamming the crap out of them, which is what normally happens?
Yeah, and this is, I think, again, making those real world connections. I know we've been kind of robbed of that opportunity in the last 18 months to 2 years, and that's been a real shame. But there's nothing quite like either a recommendation from a friend of mine who I might trust. Also, meeting someone actually at a show, that hopefully that can start to happen again as well. Just these kind of, maybe that person set out to bump into me. That's fine. I'm happy with that, because that means that they've done their research and their homework as to who they want to speak to and who they want to connect with. Look, I do try to read all of the the messages and the emails, and people hit me up on LinkedIn and they find my email out and they email me demos and whatever, and I do try to check those out, for sure, where possible. But sometimes what I would say is that sometimes can be the start of an encounter, of an engagement. It's going back to a marketing thing. In marketing, they have this rule of 6, and the idea is that if that you come across a brand in 6 or a thing or a word or whatever in 6 different environments, you'll remember that thing, you'll remember that person, and it will be ultimately a kind of a good sign that that something is happening for that brand, for that band, for that person, for whatever. So if a friend of mine recommends a band, and then I hear that same band on a playlist, and then I get an email from that band, and then that band is also opening a show for a band that I also really like, that I'm going to be at that show, instantly I've got 4 different occasions where that band is coming across my desk. And that can be a really interesting thing for me, that's going to make me sit up and listen. A single email out of the blue, and unless I've got time and it instantly connects with me, is probably just the start. There needs to be all of these other kind of interactions, I think, as well.
Totally. Just one more follow-up on that before Corey asks her question. So what has been the thing that has turned you off from checking out a band, like a networking opportunity that someone has tried to do, where it's like totally been like, I have no interest anymore just because they flubbed it so bad?
There's not any one thing that stands out, but I'm a big believer in just don't be a dick. Like just
like literally my number one saying. You can ask Curtis. I can say I have one rule: don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah, like just be a good human. Like just don't be a dick. Just like, I think just for me, whenever I'm speaking to anybody, I think I try to have some understanding and some humility about what else that person has on their plate right then, or that day, or whatever. And people get really upset if I say, I was actually maybe a little too busy that day to even open the email or to listen to the music properly, or whatever. And I think you just maybe just have a little more understanding about kind of where these things are at, and how sometimes how long things can take as well. I've definitely met a few bands that think it needs to happen for them overnight, and the ones that I've connected with the most have been the ones that have just diligently and studiously been in creating their art and understanding that it takes time to put this thing together, and for things to actually work in the real world. But I think just try to be honest, and just try to be real about who you are, where you're at. And honestly, the other thing I'd really recommend is just do your research about who you think would be the best partners for you. I think don't just please don't just get like 20, 30, 40 label emails and blind copy everyone in one email.
Yep.
Just think about, honestly, who do you align with? Who out there is already doing great work in your sphere, in your genre, subgenre, whatever it is. and ultimately, pursue that and make sure that you're really targeted about who it is you want to speak to. And that's what I was saying to you about before, and networking with other bands in your sphere and all of that stuff. That the best thing I can hear is a recommendation from a band I already trust, that because I'm already working with them, and they come to me and say, oh man, we played with this band the other night, they were so sick, like really nice guys, really had their head screwed on. They're asking to reach out. If I have a band that is going to put their reputation on the line by recommending someone, that I will definitely take that more seriously than a cold email from someone. So again, networking I think is really, really key with this stuff. But yeah, in general, don't be a dick. just be true, just be real.
Cool.
Actually, that question that you just asked was the question I was going to ask there, Curtis. He has been stealing my questions this entire podcast.
That's all good.
He's guilty of that a lot. But let's just say hypothetically, if a band were to cold pitch you, what is a way they could either get your attention or not immediately get, disregarded? Because I'm just thinking, we in the US, the UK is a fairly small country and it's pretty easy to connect with people. But like me, for example, I live in Oregon and there's not a lot of networking available to bands in my area. So what is a way they can stand out even if it is cold?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I appreciate that. And yeah, for sure. Been to the US many times. It's a very, very big place. So yeah, I can totally understand that for sure. And it can be difficult. But it can happen. And there are definitely things that you can do. I think just of course, putting yourself out there. I'm one of these people, and again, I think it's just down to kind of personal preference, but I'm one of these people that, certain social networks I have that, and they're just for friends and family. And I really kind of, like maybe, something like Facebook or, whatever. For me, like that's just the thing that I use for friends and family. But, if you, yeah, exactly. But, if you catch me on Twitter, you catch me on LinkedIn, I'm using those things for my work, for my business. And so I've tended to find that, actually the people that have kind of done their research either about me or about the label or, whatever. And that's what I said to you before about making sure you're targeting, people properly and you're not just, wasting your time and everybody else's. But, I had a band reach out to me, that were actually just initially, I think they were just talking about, a mutual love of a sports team that we were both into or, or something like this. And it was just like, oh, that person knows a little bit about that. And then, all of a sudden I saw them, they were doing something else with another band I like or whatever. That's what I was saying to you before about this. There's this kind of, I don't know, like this serendipity thing kind of going on in the background where, it's really just about that, being in the right place, putting yourself in the right circumstances. But there are a lot of things that you can definitely do online, where you don't need to be geographically in a certain location or whatever. Actually a good example of this is Lisa Coverdale from Hold Tight. So when we formed Hold Tight as a PR company, she's actually based up in Scotland, and during the kind of 10-15 years that I've known her, I've probably only met her like a handful of times, but we actually formed a company together. And the reason I met her was for exactly those reasons. We connected on Twitter. She, kind of in those early days, just kind of connected with me. We were talking about random things on Twitter, but I liked her sense of humor. I liked her wit. I liked her honesty. We were into a lot of the same kind of things, and we were really probably just talking about music in general, or maybe, some local politics or UK or whatever it was. But there are definitely opportunities to connect with people on a, as I said before, a real level, just an honest and real level. And I think if you can, you can put yourself out there and do that kind of thing, as I say, we ended up forming a company together, and she's worked with me and on and off now for 10, 15 years. And one of my best relationships in the industry I made that way. So yeah, it's a good example, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of how Curtis and I are. We've never met. He lives in Canada. I live on the West Coast. He lives on the East Coast.
Yeah,
we've never really met.
exactly. But how great is it that we're sitting here now? You guys have do loads of stuff together. I did my research, of course, and and just the fact that we have this capability now to connect with each other, and I'm sure with you guys, you continue to work with each other because you have a mutual interest in all this stuff, and you guys are cool people, and I think that's it. Just getting out there and connecting with people in a real and honest way. I think we'll definitely get you so far, and of course, yeah, then you need to back it up with the talent, the songs, the creativity, and everything else. But yeah, I think I'm out there. I'm not one of these guys that hides. I'm on Twitter. You can find me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me. I'm on Instagram. You can find me. So it's cool. Reach out.
So I have a quick question just on that with the social media and stuff like that. Why do you think it is that people don't seem to try to find and connect with people that are executives at labels on social media? Because most have they're present, but people aren't like trying to network with them or anything on social. It's kind of like they spam them with email or whatever is what it seems like to me. What are your thoughts on that out of curiosity?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I can only speak from my own kind of personal experience and also the things that I'm personally comfortable with. I know a whole bunch of executives that actually would really advise against reaching out to them on social media.
Fair.
And yeah, look, I totally respect that. I totally understand it. As I say, if you hit me up on Facebook, I won't be there. I'll be talking to my it's the only way I can keep up to date with what my family are doing. So that's what I use that platform for. But yeah, I think again, I don't know why people are just emailing. I think email is great. I mean, I use email all day long, and it's very, very good for formal business stuff, and it's a great way certainly to kind of track a conversation and to track links, and I'm definitely not saying don't email people, but all I'm saying is that if you are going to email someone, make it count, be targeted. And really, for me, an email comes probably after you've already made a connection, rather than sending something to someone you've never spoken to, never met. Even if it was just like a quick, tweet to me to say like, hey, I do such and such, we do this, whatever. Like, I would love to email you some things. Like, please let me know if that would be okay. And I will either say yes or I'll say no. And if I say no, it's not because I'm not being an asshole about it. I'm probably just looking at what it is, and actually, I don't want to waste your time, because if I'm looking at it and I think it's not for me, or it's not, there's not really a way that we could work together, then that's, we need to be fair to each other and say, yeah, I'm not going to give you hope to say, yeah, email me. I'd love to check it, because if it's not relevant, then it's not relevant. So, yeah, I think, I'm all for making connections and reaching out to people. I just think, again, just monitor that and just make sure it's targeted, and make sure you're being careful. And I'll go back to what we said before, make sure you're not being a dick about it as well. So
100%. And then one more follow-up I have on that is, so what are bands that you are more inclined to check out? Like, what's your style? Like, what's the actual band that would actually be like your perfect band that you could also sign to Nuclear Blast type thing?
Yeah, it depends what day you catch me on, I think.
Sure.
And I think if you look at everything that I signed at Basic Records, and even the stuff that I've been signing whilst I've been here at Nuclear Blast, it's pretty varied. I'm working with with Conjurer, a lot of kind of next generation stuff. The stuff that really my role here is to usher in you know, that kind of next generation of where we will be. You know, the last kind of 30-35 years at Nuclear Blast have been incredible. You know, the legacy is, you know, is amazing. But for me, I'm really focused on like, okay, cool, but what does the next 30 years look like? You know, that's my focus. So, you know, even if you look at, you know, the stuff that I've brought in, like Conjurer or Devil Sold His Soul, you know, Mole as well from Denmark, you know, that all of that stuff is pretty varied. You know, just those three bands is, you know, they're very different from each other. And the band I just signed, you know, from the UK is, again, which I'm hoping, you know, everyone can hear about within the next couple of months, is a massive departure from all of those three bands I just mentioned as well. So I think there's no one style that I'm, you know, kind of particularly looking at. I try not to chase trends or anything like that. I think, you know, I'm looking for things that I believe will have longevity, that I believe are, you know, writing great songs for our genre. And when I say our genre, I'm really just talking about heavy music, not any one particular subgenre. You know, I'm happy to sign a great metal band. I'm happy to sign a great black metal band. I'm happy to sign a great rock band. I'm happy to sign a great goth industrial band. I don't really mind where it's coming from, as long as I can hear the artistry. And I think that those songs and that artistry is going to connect with a wider audience and will have longevity. That's what I'm looking for.
Fair. I have one more question. I don't know if Corey does, but my final question though to you is, does it matter like the age of the band? Because I've heard bands like say that they're too young or too old to work with a label. Does that have anything to do with anything?
No, I mean, not for me. You know, I mean, there are some things that kind of play their part, and yeah, you know, look, for sure, if a band has been around for, you know, 20 plus years, and is kind of at a certain level, and they've kind of been at that level for 20 years, the question I have to ask myself all the time, no matter who I'm signing or what part of their career they're at, is what value can I add? Yeah. You know, what can I do for this band to really move the needle? Like that's what I ask myself. I'm just like, okay, the audience is at this level. What can we do to grow it? What do I think that we can bring something, you know, and sometimes you aren't, the answer to that question is no. You know, the answer to the question is, you know, I don't think we can do anything with this. And sometimes that can happen, you know, because the band is almost, you know, in a kind of stagnation sort of period. But it doesn't have to be like that. And I would probably just, you know, give a great, you know, kind of real world example, not that this band is kind of stagnated at all, but what I'm saying is that your fifth album can be your best album by miles. You know, and if that's the case, I mean, I don't know, Metallica, Black Album. So, you know, you've got a band that's already been a band for, you know, a whole bunch of time. But actually their best work was ahead of them at that, you know, at that point. Best in, obviously, you know, I'm not going to get into a Metallica debate about this, but I'm just saying in terms of, you know, no one could deny that record, how well it connected, how well it sold. And you know, of course, sure, I will always listen to anything from, you know, from any band. I don't necessarily think that, you know, if you're on your third record and it's still not happening for you, that's not a huge deal for me. It is a consideration, but it's not a huge deal. But yeah, I just think you really need to kind of, again, have that period of self-reflection about where you're at as a band, and actually, is this your best work, and what is it you're doing on this third or fourth record that's actually going to be way better than the previous 3 or 4, you know, like what is it you're doing? Why is it better? Why should I care about it? You know, those are the things that I think you need to answer as a band, because that's the question you're going to have to answer for everybody, for any fans that you've got, for any new fans you're hoping to get. You know, how come this is the shit on your fourth record and actually your first three didn't connect, you know?
Yeah, totally. Corey, do we have any more questions for him today?
I think I'm good on my end. That's a lot for people to digest.
Cool. So
sorry, I hope it wasn't too much, but
this is perfect. This is perfect. Do you have any final bits of advice that you want to give before we end off?
I feel like there were a couple of, just, you know, my kind of day-to-day advice things. You know, I think this whole conversation was littered with those. So yeah, please listen back. And, you know, I think we can all agree on the don't be a dick advice. That's probably, you know, the top one. You know, networking is the second. And yeah, just, you know, I think just having that super hard work ethic and that can be tough. Like I said before, you know, it can be hard enough to write the songs, to actually, you know, record the songs and get this stuff together. But in some ways, you know, like that's kind of, the work hasn't even started. You know, and that's kind of when it gets super interesting. And I think, yeah, just don't be afraid of that hard work. You know, those are the key things.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for being here. And with that, party on, Corey.
Party on, guys.